I was born in Haifa, Israel, on August 25th, 1949, in a hospital overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. My Hungarian mother and father had survived World War II and were able to escape to Israel, barely 6 months after it became an independent state. My mother, Florence, was a survivor of the Nazi concentration camps. She was first imprisoned in the camps at age 14. And witnessed her mother and her grandmother walk into the gas chamber together. Her brother was also killed. My mother met my father, Ferry Witz, in Yand, Hungary, right out of the concentration camps. In 1949, they were able to get to the new state of Israel. When I was about 7 years old, my father walked out on our family. What followed was the realization that, without him, the only ones that my mother and I could depend on were ourselves. Once the rug had been pulled out from under us, it was up to my mother, and then eventually up to me, to make a living. A hard enough life lesson to learn, but one that I learned at a very early age. Life in Israel from 1949 through 1958 was hard. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment with bullet holes in the walls from the various Israeli-Arab conflicts over the years. We didn't have a television at home. In fact, I'd never even heard of TV, and I couldn't have imagined what it was. We didn't have a bathroom. We had an outhouse, which was literally a hole in the ground. We didn't have toilet paper. We used rags, which were then washed and reused. We didn't have a bathtub or a shower stall. My mother would fill a metallic bathtub with water, pull it out into the sun to warm it up, and that was where I bathed. I had never heard of toothbrushes, or toothpaste, or tissues. When I finally learned that Americans used tissues, I was shocked that you could blow your nose into a thin piece of paper and then throw it away. We used a handkerchief, and then we would wash it. Nothing was ever thrown out. We were dirt poor. We didn't have a car, and at the time I couldn't imagine anyone having one. You walked, or you would take a bus. We didn't have a telephone. We couldn't afford one, so we didn't call anyone. Food was rationed in Israel in the 1950s, because Israel was a new country, formed in 1948, the year before I was born. The infrastructure was in its infancy. Running water was sporadic, and food was in short supply. There were certainly no brands as we're familiar with them here. Bread was just bread. Butter was just butter. You'd get a certificate, and once a week you'd be allowed to purchase milk and a little bit of meat. No brand names, just milk and meat. You could also buy rice and bread, but I never saw brand names. All of the food at the grocery store was in big sacks. You'd get a paper bag or a newspaper, and then you'd wrap up the food to take home. We didn't have a refrigerator. We had an ice box, which was a piece of furniture that functioned essentially like a cooler. Despite the absence of luxuries in my early life, I was always happy. I still am. Growing up with little, it never took much to please me.